and the other community activists whose unflagging efforts have borne fruit and have made this event a reality. Of course, I would also like to recognize the kindness and the generosity of spirit of Lord and Lady Sacks in undertaking this strenuous trip. I will be deliberately brief today, as this introduction is a matter of courtesy rather than necessity. I am more than confident that everyone present has heard much about our guest speaker, as his reputation precedes him wherever he goes. His renown also extends well beyond the borders of our own community, reaching the highest strata of the secular and non-Jewish world as well. I will not even begin to enumerate his prestigious degrees and awards, because there is no way to do that and still be brief. I definitely will say that he has attained great prominence as a leading world-class exponent of a combination of academic excellence and independent thought, and as a prolific writer and speaker whose opinions are widely sought in many circles. His oratory is universally acclaimed as superbly eloquent and unfailingly thought-provoking, and I am sure that today's discourse will be no different. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I present Rabbi Dr. Lord Jonathan Sacks.
What are of friends? It is a privilege to sit in your company. Strange things. But the strangest thing by far was writing speeches for President Bill Clinton of the United States. This was very odd. It happened in this way, that Bill Clinton was due to give a talk to a Jewish group, and he thought a rabbi could help him out on this, and he knew a rabbi, the rabbi who deals with kashrut in the OU, Rabbi Menachem Genack of the Orthodox Union. Rabbi Genack wrote him a Dvar Torah. It was very well received. So Bill Clinton said, "Do you think you could get some more of those from me? Ask your friends, I'd like to have some more." So he asked me to write some. He asked many other people to write them. They're published in a book, Letters to President Clinton. And the reason I mention this is this particular speech that I wrote for President Clinton is that it relates to what we read this Shabbat in Parshat Bo. And I said this: "Mr. President, you are a great speaker, and you speak at many momentous occasions, but I want you to imagine that you are speaking on an occasion where the very circumstances guarantee that your speech will have influence for a very long time indeed, because your people have been exiled for 210 years. They have suffered, been oppressed, turned into slaves, many of them killed. And now, through a series of wonders and plagues, they are just about to go free. And you gathered them together as a people a few days before they go free. What do you talk about? You could talk about what Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg called a new birth of freedom. You could talk about the destination that lay ahead, the Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, the land flowing with milk and honey. Or if you were made of sterner stuff, you could tell them, hint at them the difficulties that they may face on the way, what Nelson Mandela called the long walk to freedom. Any one of those speeches would have been a good speech by a good leader. Moshe Rabbeinu did none of those things, and that is what made him a unique leader. In Parshat Bo, instead of talking about any of those things, 3 times he turns their attention to the distant future and the duty they will have as parents to hand the tradition on to their children. V'haya ki yisholcha bincha marcha, v'haya ki yomru aleichem b'neichem, v'higadet alavincha bayom hahu. 3 times he talks about education. Why, of all moments, when they're just about to go free, does he talk to them about education? Because to defend a country, you need an army. But to defend a civilization, to defend freedom, You need education. You need to teach your children what it is to be free and what it feels like to lose your freedom. You need to tell them the story of your ancestors and what they had to suffer on the way to arrive at where they are now. And so we became the people whose citadels are schools, whose heroes are teachers, and whose passion is learning and the life of the mind. And that is what made Jews different. And Bill Clinton liked that quite a lot. But I hope you will also, because that is the truth. I really believe that truth. You are one of the most remarkable Jewish communities in the world in terms of how many of your children go to Jewish day schools. Not all communities are like Mexico City. And when I became chief rabbi, we had 25% of our children in Jewish day schools. When I left as chief rabbi, we had 70%. So we built a lot of schools, because I believe what I've just said. Communities that build schools survive. Communities that don't build schools don't survive. Doesn't matter how rich or successful they are. There were few communities in the world, Jewish communities, richer and more successful than the Jewish community in Alexandria. The Gemara in Sukkah tells us that the shul, does this amaze you, was so noisy that they had to have a man on the bimah waving a flag to tell when it was time to say Amen. Because they couldn't hear the Shliach Tzibur. You know, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. So, what makes a Jewish community is its schools and its teachers. However, I was set a challenge. How do you make things exciting for kids when they have to do it at school? When they have to do it as a matter of duty, how do you make it meaningful to them? And how do you combine a commitment to orthodoxy, which is unshakable, with having an open mind? And here I want to look at this week's parasha, Parasha B'Shalach. The first verse of B'Shalach and the last verse of B'Shalach have a word in common. Does anyone know which word? The word milchama. B'Shalach paro et ha'am lo nacham elokim derech tam milchama v'shavu Mitzrayim. God didn't want them to face war, and so he led them by a roundabout route, and then at the end they fought the battle against Amalek. In between is Kriyat Yam Suf. So the parasha begins with a battle and it ends with a battle. But look at the difference between the two battles. In the first battle, the people complained. You brought us out here to die in Egypt, let's go back. Forget the whole thing. And what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? You don't need to do anything at all. Just leave it to Hashem. That was the battle God fought for the Israelites. Then comes Kriyas Yam Suf, and then they are attacked by the Amalekites, and Moshe tells Yoshua Tzevi Yilachem Ba'amalek. And this time, it isn't God who fights the battle for them. They fight the battle for God. And do you know what? There are no complaints. There's no rebellion, no complaints. They fight the battle and they win. All I have to do is keep looking at Moshe Rabbeinu's arms. They have to keep looking up. Because when Moshe's arms were up, V'gava Yisrael, when Jews looked down, V'gava Amalek. There's a big difference here. And the Kabbalists call it the difference between Itaruta de La'ela and Itaruta de Latata. Who is the initiative coming from? Who's doing the work? Is it Hashem or us? When it's Hashem doing the work, the miracle is a big miracle. But it doesn't change us because we're not doing anything. But when the initiative comes from us, we get changed. So it's not the battles Hashem fights for us that changes us. It's the battles we fight for Hashem. And the same sometimes applies to kids. When they're passive, when they're recipient, when you do all the work for them, get bored, they complain, God forbid. Any other school, yes, but Emunah school, no, definitely. But you know, you do the work for them, they stay, passive students. The way to make them grow and own things and have an open mind but still stay strong in their faith is you've got to find a way of letting them fight the battle. I started studying for the rabbinate quite late in life, and I had to study very fast. I had a teacher who was very, very remarkable, because I had to learn a whole lot of stuff very, very quickly. What is the quickest and most effective way of learning anything? Teach it. So the day I entered the college as a student, I entered also as a teacher. And the things I taught, I learned faster than I learned anything else, and 50 years ago I still haven't forgotten one word of it because I was teaching. So ask yourself, can we structure a way in school or at home in which the kids become teachers to kids who are younger or who know less? Turn the kids into teachers and they will suddenly own the material. Or send them out as shagririm, as ambassadors. I don't know how, whatever it is. Or let them, something. Medinat Yisrael, we sometimes forget this, was to a large extent built by Tnuot Noah, by youth groups. They're all those Zionist youth groups. Why? Because the kids were the leaders. It was the only place where kids became leaders. Lahavdil elef havdalas. I saw the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I am a rabbi today because the Lubavitcher Rebbe told me I had to become one. No other reason. And I saw one man change the whole Jewish world by sending out shlichim all over the world. And do you know how old they were when he sent them? 21, 22, 23, to places where there are no other Jews, no infrastructure, no one helping them. He didn't give them any money. They had to do all of the work themselves. And that's how they may be the only Jew in Kathmandu, Alaska, Cusco. I don't know where you find them, I don't know who the second Jew in the moon will be, who the first Jew on the moon will be. But I know who the second one will be, a Chabadnik, putting tefillin on him, So, he sent them. Why? Because he turned them at a very young age into leaders. Or work out ways in which you can get them to be creative. Integrate the Tanakh or the Gemara class with the art class or the music class. Get them to write new music for tefillah. Get them to do for their families and illustrate their very own illustrated Haggadah. It's not difficult. And that will be a family heirloom forever. You have to do role reversal here. You've got to let them fight the battle. And once they do that, they will take it and it will no longer be routine. It will be theirs. They will have owned it. They will have given their leadership or their creativity. And so deeply will it be rooted in them that they will face all the intellectual challenges that the modern world throws at them without losing their faith. I promise you, if any one of them loses their faith, you can come and sue me personally. But I promise you they will not lose their faith. So turn them from followers to leaders, from passive to active, from people who other people fight their battles, to let them be the people who fight the battles. And you will have young Jews of whom we will all be proud. Thank you.
Yo no tengo una pregunta, yo quiero agradecer porque creo que llevamos 3 años hablando de la importancia de Project Approach y creo que hoy el Rabino Sacks explicó de una manera maravillosa y clara por qué es tan importante seguir la enseñanza a través de proyectos. Así que me siento muy contenta y sé que todos ustedes entendieron muy bien el mensaje. No, ya le traduje.
Sorry, do we have enough?
Yo trabajo en el GAN, en el Kinder, y para nosotros es muy importante triangular la educación de los niños, escuela, casa y el niño. A veces nos topamos con casas que no nos responden como nosotros quisiéramos y me gustaría saber cómo transmitir esto que usted está diciendo en que en la casa se complete el trabajo que nosotros estamos sembrando.
I'm not sure of the specific connection here in Mexico City between schools and shuls, Bate Knesset. Is there a direct connection? Or do your children with you?
No, we don't have.
So you have many, your children go to many different shuls. My personal belief is that you should ask every shul that has a significant number of parents who send their children to the school, to the gun, to any other bit of the school, but certainly to the gun, and have a special Emunah Shabbat once a year, where the parents can shep nachas from their little children being admired by the whole community. That way, you know, you take it and you turn their kids into a source of big collective pride. And that way you persuade the parents to enjoy their children, because their children then give them a source of pride. We generally find, however, that because many of our parents who send their kids to Gun or to Jewish primary schools did not themselves go to Jewish schools, we are finding that in home after home after home, the children are teaching the parents. And when we started our whole project, we hit a curious problem, and this is going back maybe 20 years. We had young children going to Jewish schools and learning to read Ivrit, just read a Siddur, and the parents couldn't read Hebrew. And we had to put on a Hebrew reading course for adults, for parents of children at Jewish schools who were ashamed that their children knew so much more than they did. We ran this in 32 different centers. We had 1,000 parents taking part each year. We did it for 3 years. We taught 3,000 adults in their adult life to read Hebrew, just because they wanted to keep up with their 4 or 5-year-old children. And at the end of each course, which always took place on Hanukkah, because we began after Simchat Torah, our motto was, we will have you reading Hebrew by Hanukkah, and it won't take a miracle. So that was the motto. And we had these celebrations at the end of each year. We got all the parents together at a big shul, and each one, one after the other was coming up by the Aron and telling their story with tears in their eyes. This year I was able to say the brachas for the family, and So by and large, we don't have that many parents resisting, but if you do, you have to bring that whole parent-child relationship into the community and allow the parents to see the pride that the child is bringing the whole community. It's probably the only way you can do it, because Otherwise, you can't intervene in a family.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question. Was that?
Yeah.
Do I need that? No, Shivani was interested. Would the advancement
No, but give her the microphone. She needs it
she
for
needs
to
it.
translate.
Sí.
with the advancements of technology today and all the things that are
No,
No.
okay. No, she wants in English and then she will translate
See.
to Spanish. So she prefers in English.
Okay, with the advancement of technology and all that's in front of the child today, how do we keep the child in this world, in reality, without blocking him out and assuming that keeping him away from it will be the answer, but allowing him to partake in what's going on in the world and yet not be worried or how to deal with the fact that there are a lot of things that could cause problems in our world?
The internet, tablets, iPads, smartphones, and everything that goes with them, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, WhatsApp, none of which I know, but my grandchildren know. We are beginning to realize, and not only we Jews, everyone is beginning to realize, are having a very, very, very bad effect on children. And the head of Apple, Tim Cook, was reported in yesterday's press as telling his nephew, don't go on social media. They will make you very unhappy. For those who don't know it, Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs, refused to let his children have smartphones. The impact of social media is devastating. And an American psychologist called Gene Twenge, Twenge, at the University of San Diego, has just brought out the key book called iGen, i.e. about children born since 1995 who've grown up with smartphones and social networking software. And it's scary. It's got nothing to do with Jews. You look at levels of reported happiness among young people, and it stays pretty level until 2012, and it suddenly drops like that. Levels of reported cases of depression and stress-related syndromes, horizontal until 2012, and they rocket. What was 2012? The year in which most American teenagers had smartphones and Instagram accounts. The more time kids spend on these sites, the more depressed they become. And we are seeing this lead to a movement of tshuva, the like of which I've never seen before. Because I'm getting feedback from Jews who had no Yiddishkeit whatsoever. One of them spoke to me and said on the internet and said, Rabbi Sacks, my kids spend all their time on smartphone, it's ruining them, they no longer have attention spans, they lose their social skills, they can't keep eye contact, even when we're sitting having a meal together, they've got their phone under the table and they're texting their friends. And we said, this is ruining our family. So we sat down as a family and we took a decision. We are going to have once a week a screen-free day. She said, you'll love what we decided to call it. We're calling it Shabbos. So people are rediscovering Shabbat from nowhere because of the harm this technology is using. Now, you know that Facebook is not going to be able to stand back from this anymore. The pressure today on Mark Zuckerberg, who incidentally, Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg, are becoming much more openly Jewish. Both of them send out messages on Yom Kippur, both of them, etc., etc. And they realize that people are not going to stand for this anymore. So they're going to work out, I think, ways of filtering things so that you can have more effective parental controls. Parental controls here are essential, and you have to have ways of programming your Wi-Fi so that the kids can only watch at certain hours and only certain agreed parameters, and you can control it that way. And you must control it that way, because it's not just us who feel it. Everyone is feeling it today. It's really, really dangerous stuff. At the same time, it is very exciting stuff, because you can communicate. This stuff was made for Am Yisrael. Some of it was made by Am Yisrael, but it was made for Am Yisrael, because to no one is it better suited than small people who are scattered all over the world. We can communicate. To give you one simple example, courtesy of the Jerusalem Post and the Ministry for Diaspora Affairs this year, we lit Hanukkah candles each night from somewhere else in the Jewish world, from Red Square in Moscow to Alaska to Tunisia to Golders Green, Hendon. We did it from a Jewish school in Hendon on Facebook Live. So you could see the 8 nights of Hanukkah, Jews lighting all over the world. And then Racheli Frankel in Israel lit. So this is very powerful technology, and you can use it livracha, but be aware that it is also a kabbalah. And I am sure that these social network companies will be forced in the very near future to develop stronger parental controls. Because, I mean, to put it mildly, the phenomenon of cyberbullying. Do you know this phenomenon? Do you know how many kids, Rahman and Litzlan, have committed suicide because of this? We shouldn't know. I mean, countries are not going to put up with this anymore. So expect those companies to develop much more rigorous and effective ways of parental control.
Como usted lo ha dicho en muchos de sus libros, el pueblo de Israel nos basamos siempre en las preguntas y en que dejar al niño que se pregunte varias cosas. ¿Cómo podemos hacer como padres o como maestros? Porque nosotros no sabemos todas las respuestas a todas las preguntas de los niños. Y como bien lo dijo, hoy en día la tecnología nos está rebasando. Y podría ser de que o demos una respuesta incorrecta y que se quede con esa respuesta por toda su vida, o que lo que no sabemos nosotros lo busquen en internet y en varios, ¿cómo se llama?, en las redes sociales o en noticias de internet, y que puedan ser también algunas respuestas incorrectas hacia el niño. Entonces, ¿cómo podemos lidiar con esto? O también sería algo problemático dejar que el niño no se pregunte nunca.
We have a famous atheist in England called Richard Dawkins. I don't know if has his work come to Mexico? Richard Dawkins. He thinks religion is very stupid. However, I've done a number of conversations with him on the BBC. And before we even began, I said to the BBC, let's see if we get on. Let's invite Richard for dinner. So Elaine and I invited Richard Dawkins and his wife, a few of our local members of our shul, and we had dinner together. I don't think he had ever sat round a table with such incredibly intelligent people who were religious. And then I told him about the Jewish Nobel Prizes, which he didn't know about. We are 1/5 of the population of the world, and we won 28% of Nobel Prizes in physics, 27% of Nobel Prizes in medicine, 36% of Nobel Prizes in economics, etc., etc. And he was blown away. So he said, how do you do that? You know, and we said to him, because in Judaism, the first duty of a Jewish parent is to teach your child to ask questions. There's nothing lower than Misha'eno Yudeh Lishol, and if She'eno Yudeh Lishol, Ad P'tach. But you raise such a serious issue because the questions are really out there. Everyone knows the question. And the wrong answers are out there. Very, very powerful books written, Rahman al-Islam, by atheists, and we have not put the right answers out there. And I think we're suffering from a shortage of material, whether in written form or video form or whatever. And I think we have to do something about this. I mean, kids ask me, students, 18-year-olds, ask me, should I go to university to study philosophy? Now, I went to university to study philosophy. So they are very surprised when I tell them, no, don't. Why? Because I can't give them a reading list that will give them the right answers to the questions I know they're going to have. And it's too much of a risk. So I think we've got to set to work to produce that material. We're in this is not our main business in life, but did you see our little animation videos, the Why I Am a Jew? And so we've done a few of those for the things that we thought were urgent. We have a lot of students suffering from the BDS movement in universities, so we put out a cartoon thing on BDS. We put one out on anti-Semitism. We're just putting out a series of 6 in the next year on some of the big ideas that I've developed in my book. But I've said already to our office that the next thing we have to do is these questions of faith, because the material is not there. So I'm worried about this, because our kids will ask the questions and they will find the wrong answers. I share your worries. So I think we have to put some work in onto this. We are just working on our first ever package of educational material. I'm not sure if it's for this kind of school. What do you think? Yes? It's called 10 ways, 10 dimensions. What does it mean to be a Jew? The way of Torah, the way of Chesed, the way of Emunah, the way of peoplehood, which will start with a little video from me, short video, and then we've produced the workbooks and the teacher's guides. So we'll bring that out, I don't know when, in the next 6 months or so. And if that works, then we'll do one on Emunah, and then we'll do one on Tefillah, because Tefillah is such a big problem. So I promise you, in the next couple of years, we'll try and do that material. But I wish I had an easy answer. I don't have an easy answer. Your question is a very good question.
Thank you very much. This is the last question.
Oh. Voy a hablar en español. En Yeshivat Emunah, como director de esta escuela, lo quiero comentar. Tengo papás, vamos a empezar. Tengo Ashkenazim, tengo Sfaradim, tengo hijos de Avrechim, tengo hijos de Balei Batim. Balei Batim, professionals, hay de todo. El mix acá es muy amplio. Y una de las dificultades que a veces encontramos es cómo mantener united, cómo mantener todos juntos básicamente yo y Mónica, la directora junto conmigo, siempre decimos que cualquier papá que viene, que aquí básicamente le interesamos tres cosas, le va a decir en Yiddish, en Ivrit, define muy rápido, Yiddishkeit, Menschlichkeit, y que sea educado, para que tenga parnose. Y a todo el mundo le interesa, pero hay variedad. Entonces, no sé si usted, por su experiencia como vino, nos puede dar palabras de consuelo, de inspiración, cómo mantener todo el público unido hacia una causa noble, que es la educación judía.
You have the greatest privilege of all, and the greatest mitzvah of all, keeping completely different Jews together. The hardest task in the universe, but the most important task, because Hashem does not like uniformity. So he didn't create one tree. He created 250,000 different kinds of tree. He created life, but not one kind of life, but more than 3 million life forms. He loves language, but he didn't create one language. He created 6,000 of them. The truth is, as I have so often argued, that the miracle of monotheism is not one God, one truth, one way. The miracle is that unity up there creates diversity down here. Now, diversity means this nation and that nation waging war against one another. That's why he chose the Jewish people, who have more diversity per square inch than any other people in the universe. You stand at the Kotel, you will see more variety than an 18th century anthropologist would have seen in an entire lifetime. Black Jews, white Jews, yellow Jews, red Jews, every kind, every minhag. Sephardim come in a million different varieties. Every little shtetl in Eastern Europe had its own Hasidic sect, and its own Rebbe, and its own Nigunim. That is it. And out of that, what do they call it in America? A pluribus unum. Out of that great mix comes something that biologists call biodiversity. Without biodiversity, things don't last. A mix creates perennial creativity. And do you know what? The Ashkenazim, I've been here for, 12 hours? So I'm already an expert on Jewish life in Mexico City. And I can see that what the Ashkenazim have gained by the Sephardim from Syria, who brought new levels of, of passion and commitment. They don't yet know they have things to learn from the Ashkenazim, but they'll work that out. Ezehu chacham halomei b'kol adam. So we have this unusual bracha acharona, since this was the she'ilah acharona, which we make over a cup of coffee or a glass of water. Borei nefashot rabot v'chesronam, which is a very odd bracha. Borei nefashot rabot, God makes many different kinds of people. V'chesronam, and all of them lack something. Now, why do we thank God for making us lack something? The answer is, if we had no chesronot, we would never need anyone else. We would live on our own. We don't need anyone else. But the fact that each one of us has chesronot means that what I lack, you have. And what you lack, I have. So by coming together, each one of us can contribute something to other people. This is a very, very beautiful idea. And therefore it is that diversity, when it's concentrated in a single community, which is challenging but very enriching. And the short answer is that basically, number one, we all are part of the same Brit Goral. We all have the same history and the same memories. Number two, even if some Jews think I am the Chacham, and around me I can see a Sheina Yudei Elisho, and a Tam, and a Rosha, nonetheless, we're all sitting around the same table, we're all telling the same story, we're all eating the same food, drinking the same wine. This is what Judaism is about. Hashem brought out of Israel 12 tribes. Why does the Torah say 12 tribes? Let's have one tribe and then we get on with one another. Because diversity is of the essence. We as Jews can show the world that the people not like us are the people who enlarge us. They don't threaten us. I don't know if you saw a little thing I did called the TED Talk. I don't know, it's worth watching the first few minutes because I tell a nice story about Elaine. It's about when I suddenly met somebody when I was a student. I met somebody who was so completely unlike me that I thought we had to get married immediately. Because, as I said in my talk, it's the people not like us who make us grow. And therefore, somehow, A, you have to understand this as a wonderful blessing, not, God forbid, as a curse. B, you have to make sure that every single group feels it is honored and respected for the contributions it brings. And C, you have to tell people, Rahman al-Islam, what happens if Jews fail to live together. And I do not wish to tell you what happens when Jews fail to live together, because it has happened too many times in our history, and Rav lach shevet be'emek habacha. Enough already from these tears. You know, are we short of enemies out there that we have to become enemies to ourselves? We have to show the world what it is like to be totally different, to disagree on everything, and yet still be brothers and sisters. And that is demanding and challenging. I don't envy you, but I've been there and I'm still there, you know, and I'm still standing. And I say that this is the challenge Hashem has always set us. And we should remember the history of what happens when we allow ourselves to be divided. Divided, we can achieve nothing. United, there is nothing we cannot achieve. And let Emunah School be a living example of that at its very best. Thank you.
Gracias.